The coldest, driest, and deadliest continent on the planet wants to kill you the second you step off the plane. But surviving those brutal elements is actually the easy part. The true nightmare of Antarctica is navigating a suffocating web of international laws designed by politicians sitting in warm offices thousands of miles away. Here are the absolute strict and weird rules forced upon anyone crazy enough to live on the ice. 1. To live in Villas Las Estrellas, a civilian settlement in Antarctica, you must surgically remove your perfectly healthy appendix. Why? Because the nearest hospital capable of handling a sudden appendicitis is over 600 miles away across a frozen, unforgiving ocean. The authorities decided it was significantly cheaper and easier to force everyone to undergo preemptive surgery rather than risk an emergency medical evacuation. Honestly, would you voluntarily give up a healthy internal organ just to hang out with a bunch of penguins in the freezing cold? 2. If you see a baby penguin tripping, falling, or desperately struggling in the snow, you are legally obligated to stand there and do absolutely nothing. The Antarctic Treaty strictly forbids humans from interacting with or altering the natural behavior of the wildlife. Even if a bird is stuck in a snowy trench right at your boots, offering a helping hand is literally a federal offense. You just have to watch nature take its clumsy, brutal course. It is the ultimate psychological test, turning compassionate scientists into passive observers of a frozen tragedy. 3. We already know you cannot touch the wildlife, but the rules go much further. You are legally required to run away from them. The official guidelines state you must maintain a strict distance of at least 15 feet from the animals. But penguins are naturally curious and lack any fear of humans. If a knee-high bird waddles toward you to investigate, you must immediately drop what you are doing and slowly back away. You are effectively forced to surrender your ground to a tiny flightless bird. It is the most embarrassing turf war on the planet. 4. You will not find any majestic huskies pulling wooden sleds across the ice anymore. Since 1994, all non-native species, specifically dogs, have been permanently banned from the entire continent. Authorities were completely terrified that the dogs might transmit canine distemper to the local seal populations or disrupt the delicate ecosystem. After decades of faithful service helping early explorers conquer the South Pole, man's best friend was officially evicted by strict international law. Now, scientists rely solely on noisy snowmobiles. 5. At certain extreme field camps, stepping outside to casually relieve yourself is strictly prohibited. You are required to use a designated pee bottle inside your freezing tent. But here is the catch. You cannot just dump it. You must carry your own bodily fluids back to the main base for proper disposal. The environmental protocols are so intensely strict that leaving a frozen yellow puddle on the snow is treated like a toxic chemical spill. Could you handle hauling weeks' worth of your own frozen waste across the tundra without losing your mind? 6. Liquid water is incredibly scarce at these bases because melting ice requires a massive amount of expensive fuel. As a result, residents are strictly limited to 2-minute showers, often only twice a week. At McMurdo Station, people take what are called combat showers. You turn the water on to get wet, turn it off to aggressively scrub yourself with soap, and turn it back on just to rinse. Personal hygiene basically becomes an extreme sport where speed is the only way to survive. How long could you go before your coworkers started avoiding you at lunch? 7. You cannot feed any food scraps to the local wildlife, but the rules regarding raw chicken are shockingly specific. Importing raw poultry is heavily restricted, and all chicken bones must be carefully incinerated after consumption. This bizarre regulation exists because poultry can carry Newcastle disease, a highly contagious virus that could easily cross over and completely devastate the native penguin colonies. The international scientific community is so intensely paranoid about avian flu that a leftover chicken wing is treated exactly like radioactive waste. 8. You cannot legally become a citizen of Antarctica because nobody has the right to live there permanently. But that did not stop international governments from trying bizarre legal loopholes. In 1978, Argentina intentionally sent a heavily pregnant woman to the remote Esperanza base just so she could give birth on the ice. The goal was purely political, They wanted to register the very first native-born Antarctic baby to strengthen their sovereign claim over that specific slice of the frozen continent. Imagine being deployed to a freezing, medically isolated wasteland for the sole purpose of acting as a political prop for a birth certificate. They weaponized childbirth just to plant a metaphorical flag in the snow. 9. Planning a destination. Wedding usually involves a tropical beach, but you can actually get legally married on a freezing glacier where absolutely nobody is allowed to live permanently. If you are stationed in the British Antarctic Territory, you can file an official marriage application with a government commissioner located all the way in London. In 2017, the very first legal wedding took place at the remote Rothera research station. The couple had to endure freezing temperatures, heavy parkas, and a guest list entirely made up of shivering coworkers. It is incredibly ironic because you are signing a legally binding government contract in a territory that has no native population, no permanent citizens, and is governed by an international treaty that practically forbids you from staying there. 10. Boarding a military cargo flight to the ice completely strips away your personal dignity. You do not get a standard boarding pass, and you certainly cannot lie about your weight. Before boarding, you must step onto a massive industrial scale in front of everyone, fully dressed in heavy winter gear, holding all your luggage. Logistics officers do not view you as a human passenger. You are strictly recorded on the official manifest as raw cargo tonnage. Because planes must calculate precise fuel loads to survive the treacherous flight, every pound matters. There is no hiding your weight when a loadmaster shouts your total mass to a room full of strangers. You are essentially treated with the exact same logistical respect as a pallet of frozen vegetables. Are you ready to be shipped as literal human cargo? 11. You might think picking up a cool rock to show your friends back home is harmless, but in Antarctica, it is literally a federal crime. The International Antarctic Treaty strictly forbids taking any natural souvenirs from the continent. You cannot pocket a random pebble, a stray penguin feather, or a dried-up seal bone. Border customs will actually inspect your luggage for contraband gravel. Scientists and tourists must leave the landscape exactly as they found it. Would you risk heavy fines just to put an Antarctic rock on your living room bookshelf? 12. If you commit a crime at a research station, who exactly arrests you? Antarctica has no official police force, no sovereign government, and zero local prisons. Instead, the continent operates on a bizarre legal loophole where you are strictly subject to the laws of your own home country, regardless of whose base you are visiting. If an American steals from a French scientist on an Argentina station, American laws apply to the thief. It is an absolute jurisdictional nightmare. 13. The extreme isolation of the frozen continent might seem like the perfect excuse to completely ignore politics, but not if you are Australian. Because voting in Australia is strictly mandatory by federal law, the government actually goes through the absurd trouble of setting up official polling stations directly on their remote Antarctic research bases. You cannot just use the freezing blizzards or the 6-month darkness as an excuse to skip casting your ballot. The government will literally secure a satellite link to ensure you fulfill your civic duty while wearing heavily insulated snow pants. It is perhaps the only nation on Earth that legally drags you into a political election while you are actively trying to survive the harshest, most desolate climate known to humanity. Even while you are dodging aggressive seals and studying ancient ice cores, the government still demands to know your opinion on local tax reform. 14. Packing your sensitive scientific equipment in styrofoam seems logical, but bringing it to Antarctica is completely illegal. The Antarctic Treaty absolutely bans all expanded polystyrene packaging. The extreme winds on the continent can easily shatter a foam cooler, instantly scattering thousands of tiny white plastic beads across a completely white landscape. It is an impossible environmental disaster to clean up. Every single fragile item must be packed in approved materials. Imagine safely unpacking a delicate microscope without any helpful bubble wrap. 15. Surviving the brutal, mind-numbing isolation of a 6-month winter might make you want to heavily hit the bottle, but authorities have completely eliminated the ultimate frozen frat party. Alcohol is strictly rationed and heavily monitored like a controlled substance. You cannot just pack a suitcase full of your favorite whiskey before your deployment flight. Instead, you are legally restricted to buying a highly specific, limited quota of beer or wine per week from the station's tiny internal store. Managers rigorously track every single purchase you make to prevent anyone from descending into dangerous alcoholism, while trapped inside the cramped, highly flammable research stations. It turns the most isolated, dangerous place on the entire planet into a heavily chaperoned college dorm, where the resident advisor legally controls your beer intake. Getting cut off at the bar hits entirely different when the bar is located at the South Pole. 16. Privacy is a luxury you completely lose the moment you arrive. At many of the larger bases, you are strictly forbidden from locking your bedroom door at any time, even when you are sleeping. Why? Fire is the absolute greatest danger in Antarctica due to the incredibly dry air and constant high winds. If a blaze breaks out, rescue teams cannot waste precious seconds breaking down heavy doors to drag you out of your bunk. Your personal privacy is immediately sacrificed for basic survival. Are you ready to sleep with an unlocked door in a dorm full of strangers? 17. In 1959, global superpowers actually had to sit down and legally agree not to nuke Antarctica. The Antarctic Treaty explicitly prohibits any military explosions or the disposal of radioactive waste on the continent. It officially made the frozen wasteland the very first nuclear arms-free zone on the entire planet. Apparently, the international community was genuinely worried that someone might try to test a hydrogen bomb on a colony of emperor penguins. It is a completely logical rule, but the fact that it had to be written down is hilarious. 18. If you bought a fancy new camera drone to film the majestic icebergs, leave it at home. Flying recreational drones is strictly prohibited by most national Antarctic programs. The extreme cold drains lithium batteries in minutes, causing drones to unexpectedly fall out of the sky and become unrecoverable plastic trash. Furthermore, the loud buzzing terrifies the local bird populations, causing them to abandon their nests. Only specialized, permitted scientists can fly them. Your cinematic vacation vlog is simply not worth causing a minor ecological disaster. 19. Driving heavily armored vehicles on the ice comes with a very specific hierarchy, and humans are at the very bottom. Pedestrians do not have the right-of-way over massive snow tractors, but wildlife has the right-of-way over absolutely everything. If a single sleepy seal decides to take a nap in the middle of the only cleared ice road, the entire supply chain completely stops. You cannot honk, you cannot nudge it, and you certainly cannot shoo it away. You just have to sit in your idling truck and wait for the seal to wake up on its own schedule. 20. You cannot bring a gun or establish a military base in Antarctica, but militaries are still allowed to operate there. This bizarre contradiction means military cargo planes and personnel are heavily used for logistics, but they must remain strictly unarmed and peaceful. A seasoned military pilot can fly tons of vital scientific gear through treacherous blizzards, but they cannot carry a standard sidearm while doing it. It is the only continent where the military effectively acts as a highly trained, heavily regulated delivery service for freezing scientists. 21. You might think extreme isolation makes Antarctica the perfect place to binge your favorite shows, but streaming Netflix is strictly banned. Satellite bandwidth is agonizingly limited and aggressively prioritized for vital scientific data. If you are caught secretly streaming a movie, you can single-handedly crash the entire station's network. IT departments ruthlessly monitor every byte of usage, and rule breakers face immediate network bans. You must survive the long winter with whatever movies you downloaded before leaving civilization. It is a brutal digital detox. 22. Getting pregnant on the ice is a strict violation of your employment contract. Because the continent completely lacks the medical facilities required for prenatal care or a safe childbirth, a positive pregnancy test results in immediate mandatory deportation. Female workers are often required to take strict pregnancy tests just days before their deployment flights. If the results are positive, your extreme adventure is instantly canceled forever. It is highly controversial. Would you accept a job that legally dictates your reproductive choices for an entire year? 23. If you are a mad scientist looking to build a secret lair and conduct classified experiments, Antarctica is legally the worst place you could possibly go. The Antarctic Treaty mandates that every single scientific observation and result gathered on the continent must be completely exchanged and made freely available to the entire world. It is the only landmass on the planet where intellectual property essentially does not exist, and keeping a scientific secret is a literal violation of international law. Whether you are discovering a groundbreaking new microbe or drilling deep into ancient ice cores to analyze the atmosphere, you cannot patent it, hide it, or sell it to a private corporation. You are legally forced to share your homework with every other country on Earth. It creates an incredible utopian environment of global cooperation, but it completely ruins the business model for any evil genius trying to monopolize the freezing unknown. 24. Throwing away a simple candy wrapper requires a master's degree in extreme waste management. At American bases, trash must be meticulously separated into over a dozen highly specific categories, from biological waste to unrecyclable plastics. If you accidentally toss a stray aluminum can into the paper bin, you do not just get a slap on the wrist. You will be publicly shamed by the staff, and repeat offenders are forced to undergo humiliating retraining sessions. You become terrifyingly hyper-aware of every single piece of garbage you generate daily. 25. You cannot just walk up and permanently mark the exact location of the South Pole. Because the entire research station sits on a massive, constantly shifting ice sheet, the geographic South Pole literally moves about 30 feet every single year. Tampering with the official metallic marker is strictly forbidden. Instead, scientists hold an intricate, highly regulated ceremony every January 1st to officially move the pole to its new, mathematically precise location. It is the only landmark on Earth that requires a legally mandated annual relocation. 26. If the unthinkable happens and someone passes away in Antarctica, they cannot be buried there under any circumstances. The Antarctic Treaty strictly prohibits human burials to protect the pristine environment and completely prevent biological contamination. The deceased must be securely stored in the freezing cold until they can be legally repatriated back to their home country. Imagine the psychological toll of working alongside the frozen remains of a colleague while waiting months for a rescue flight. Could you honestly handle that kind of dark pressure? 27. In 2022, the United States government officially added the magnificent emperor penguin to the Endangered Species Act. While this sounds like a noble victory for conservation, it creates a completely bizarre legal reality. An American citizen can now be federally prosecuted by the United States government for harassing a bird that lives almost 9,000 miles away from the nearest American border. The United States is legally enforcing its own domestic environmental laws on a lawless, frozen continent at the absolute bottom of the planet. If an American scientist gets too close to an emperor penguin in international territory, they face the exact same severe federal penalties as if they had poached a bald eagle in a national park. It is a wild flex of jurisdictional power, proving that even at the edge of the world, you can never truly escape the incredibly long, highly bureaucratic arm of the federal government. 28. Stepping outside on a brilliantly sunny day without sunglasses is not just foolish. It is a serious safety violation. The ozone layer above Antarctica is famously thin, and the stark white snow reflects ultraviolet rays with absolutely blinding intensity. If you are caught outside without authorized protective eyewear and heavy sunscreen, you will be formally reprimanded. Snow blindness can permanently burn your corneas in mere hours. The authorities absolutely refuse to waste precious medical resources on someone who was too lazy to wear their sunglasses. 29. It is highly illegal to stack a few loose stones into a tiny pyramid, write your initials on a boulder, or leave behind a fun geocaching box for future explorers. The landscape must remain completely, flawlessly untouched by human ego. Scientists rely on the exact natural placement of rocks to study ancient geological movements and glacial shifts over millions of years. If you casually kick a rock to build a cute little snowman, you might be permanently destroying critical geological data. The authorities treat a stacked rock pile not as art, but as a severe act of environmental vandalism. Your desire to leave a tiny, harmless mark on the most remote place on Earth could literally result in massive fines and permanent banishment from the scientific community. Your ego has absolutely no place on the ice. 30. When fresh crews arrive during the summer, they bring a highly feared biological threat: common human colds. Because isolated winter crews completely lose their immune resistance, the arrival of newcomers sparks a miserable wave of illness, affectionately called the crud. To combat this, strict hygiene and awkward social distancing rules are heavily enforced when new planes land. You are legally forbidden from shaking hands or hugging the new arrivals until the medical team is completely satisfied that nobody brought a rogue rhinovirus to the frozen ice. 31. Honoring the dead is usually a deeply personal human tradition, but in Antarctica, grief is heavily regulated by international bureaucracy. You are strictly forbidden from erecting any memorials, commemorative plaques, or wooden crosses without first getting official approval at a massive international diplomatic meeting. If a tragedy occurs and an explorer perishes on the ice, you cannot just stack some stones or place a heartfelt marker at the site. The Antarctic Treaty system intensely polices the landscape to prevent countries from using tragic memorials as sneaky ways to establish historical land claims. Remembering a fallen colleague literally requires submitting a mountain of paperwork to a global committee for a vote. It is a place where your memory can only be preserved if a bunch of politicians in a warm boardroom thousands of miles away agree that your memorial fits the strict environmental and political guidelines. 32. Packing your favorite camouflage jacket is a terrible idea, as wearing military-style camo is completely banned for civilian workers. This is not a fashion critique. It is purely about survival. The landscape consists of stark white snow and dark, jagged volcanic rocks. If you wear winter camo and collapse from exhaustion, rescue helicopters will never be able to spot your body against the terrain. You are strictly mandated to wear blindingly bright neon red gear. Fashion is irrelevant when blending in literally means freezing to death unnoticed. 33. You must completely abandon your morning beauty routine because wearing cologne, perfume, or even heavily scented shampoo is strictly prohibited. In incredibly tight, poorly ventilated winter quarters, strong artificial smells linger forever. What smells like a pleasant lavender body wash to you will inevitably induce violent nausea and raging headaches in your highly stressed, isolated roommates. Smelling too aggressively good is viewed as a hostile act. 34. If you have bad eyesight, you must strictly abandon your contact lenses before stepping off the plane. Wearing contacts outside in deep Antarctic winter is incredibly dangerous because the extreme freezing winds will literally freeze the tiny lenses directly to your eyeballs. Instead, you are legally forced to wear bulky, highly unfashionable government-issued prescription safety glasses that constantly fog up under your thermal face mask. Choosing vanity over safety will literally cost you your vision. It is the absolute ultimate revenge of the nerds. 35. During the brutal, pitch-black midwinter, there is a horrifyingly strict policy that forbids search and rescue operations. If you foolishly wander away from the base during a massive whiteout and get lost, the station commander is explicitly forbidden from sending a team to look for you. Deploying a rescue squad in completely blind, negative 80-degree weather puts the entire camp in mortal danger. If you wander off, you are instantly considered a lost cause. Knowing absolutely nobody is coming to save you, would you ever dare step off the safe paths? 36. There is an absolute zero-tolerance policy for physical violence, and the punishment is incredibly swift. If you get into a fistfight over a disagreement in the cramped cafeteria, there is no trial or mediation. You are instantly fired, confined to your quarters under strict guard, and forcefully deported on the very next available cargo flight. The psychological pressure of extreme isolation makes authorities terrified of escalating violence. A single thrown punch instantly ends your prestigious scientific career and permanently blacklists you from the ice. 37. Let us talk about the ultimate exercise in global self-control. Buried beneath miles of crushing Antarctic ice lies an absolute treasure trove of coal, iron ore, and very likely massive reserves of untapped oil. But under the Madrid Protocol, all commercial mining is strictly banned until the year 2048. It is the only continent on Earth where humanity literally stumbled upon billions of dollars in natural resources and legally decided to just pretend they do not exist. Imagine being a geologist discovering a literal mountain of solid gold, only to be told by international law that you cannot touch a single pebble of it. Global superpowers, who normally fight over a drop of oil, actually signed a binding treaty to leave it all buried in the freezing dark. But the real question is, what exactly happens when that treaty expires in 2048? Will the world keep its promise, or will it trigger the coldest, most ruthless gold rush in human history? 38. Passing the mandatory psychological evaluation is notoriously difficult, but you can actually be disqualified for being completely too happy. Psychologists heavily scrutinize candidates who display excessive, unwarranted optimism about the harsh isolation. Statistics prove that aggressively cheerful people experience the most violent, dangerous psychological crashes when the endless dark winter finally breaks their spirit. They specifically want cynical, emotionally flat introverts who can handle the misery. 39. When working in the pristine McMurdo Dry Valleys, the environmental rules reach a sickening level of intimacy. You are absolutely forbidden from leaving any human waste behind, meaning you must poop directly into a specialized plastic bag, seal it, and carry it with you everywhere you go. If you are on a 2-week expedition, you are physically hauling 14 days of your own frozen excrement in your backpack. Dropping a single nugget on the ancient sterile rocks is a severe federal violation. It completely ruins the romance of extreme outdoor exploration. 40. Imagine stepping out of your lab with a lukewarm cup of coffee and casually tossing the rest into the snow. In Antarctica, you just committed a massive environmental crime. Pouring any non-native liquid directly onto the ice, even a simple herbal tea, is strictly banned. The treaty classifies your leftover beverage as a chemical pollutant that permanently alters the pristine chemical makeup of the snow. You must walk that cold mug all the way back to an approved indoor biosink. Would you risk a massive federal fine over a tiny splash of cold coffee? All right, we have explored 40 bizarre regulations, with just one final point remaining. But before we hit number 41, it is time for the final verdict. For us, the award for the most absurd rule today goes to weaponizing childbirth for territorial claims. Flying a pregnant woman to a freezing wasteland just to print a strategic birth certificate is top-tier political madness. Do you agree with our verdict? Or did a different rule completely steal the show for you? Let us know down in the comments what you think. And now, our final entry. 41. When the weather officially hits Condition 1, meaning winds exceed 60 miles per hour and visibility drops to 0, a terrifying rule takes effect. You are legally forbidden from leaving whatever building you are currently in. If you are eating lunch in the cafeteria when the alarm sounds, congratulations, you now live in the cafeteria. Stepping outside is grounds for immediate termination because you will almost certainly die. The extreme cold and zero visibility mean you could freeze to death just 10 feet from your own bedroom door. Would you survive being trapped in an office with your boss for 3 days straight? Antarctica proves that no matter how far we run from civilization, we simply cannot escape the suffocating grip of government regulations. If humanity ever colonizes Mars, do you think we will drag this exact same absurd bureaucracy with us across the solar system? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this frozen journey, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and stick around for more unbelievable laws and rules.